All right, we just watched Minari. I'm Kevin, this is Mark, and we are going to talk about Minari. So I'm Asian and Mark is Caucasian. This is a good way to start because a lot of what I have to say does deal with my Asian background.
Yes, I have a feeling I'm very interested to hear what you have to say in this film.
I want you to say your star rating first. I feel deeply strongly about this.
Okay. I hope you don't hate me for this. 3.5.
Okay. Ooh, I'm giving it a 1 star.
Wow. Okay, good. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I was almost scared that you would love this because I did not love this. I appreciate it deeply. I didn't
like this at all.
I appreciate this deeply,
livid.
But
well,
from the very beginning, from the very beginning, I was like, man, this feels like budget Ozu.
Oh no. Okay, we do have some different opinions then based on what you just said.
Yeah. I mean, okay, that's maybe not the greatest thing to say because this doesn't feel at all like Ozu. I got the impression it's nothing like Ozu. I say that because I got the feeling that it wanted to be Ozu sometimes.
It feels more like there's the director who did Shoplifters. I don't know if you've heard of that. This was a Asian foreign language nominee a few years back.
I don't know.
It's a Japanese film. There's the director is known for this type of pastoral type movie. I like Shoplifters more. I gave it a 4.5, but I'd call this budget Shoplifters. I think his name's Koreeda Koreeda, Hirokazu Koreeda.
Okay.
Yeah, who is a foreign film darling. Everyone loves his movies. Apparently Shoplifters isn't his best, but we could definitely dive into it because I feel like I like you calling it sort of a budget Ozu movie. But yeah, from the framing and just a lot of the cinematic choices and the music choices, I can see more modern influences than Ozu. It's like
extremely
Ozu
modern.
Three times removed.
Yes, yeah, Ozu 3 times removed. I definitely agree. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the positive part? Because
the positive part, okay, if it hadn't been for the last 20 minutes, I would have rated this lower. Because Mark, I realized not for the reasons
before
you may think.
Before you go on, Mark, we are completely opposite.
That's awesome.
It was a 5 from the first half.
Wow. Okay.
But the second half completely tore me apart in the worst way.
Interesting. Okay.
Like I hated it.
Yeah. At the end of the movie when they were like, they were starting to. Oh, right. Okay. I'm not going to spoil what happens. I'm just going to talk about my experience with it.
Sounds good. I like that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for reminding me because I'm also a bitch for spoilers. I started to realize it started to show the thesis statement of the movie. I'll say that much. And
wow.
And
what?
Yeah. I guess we can talk about it more clearly. And I appreciated what they were going for at one sliver of it. And I was like, oh, okay, I like that. But a lot of my complaints with this movie, I feel, is a failure in storytelling and communication, maybe.
Whoa.
And maybe looking for ways to be. Maybe the crass way I can say this is this felt like Oscar bait 80 stuff where
fascinating.
Yeah, where they I don't know.
All right.
I'm not exactly sure why I don't like this movie. So I want to talk about it because
love that. Okay.
This feels like the kind of movie I want to like.
But before you go on, before I forget, we have to parallel this because so far, there's been some black and white, some huge difference.
Okay.
I will say, I think that the thesis statement was extremely strong in the first half. And then the second half of it completely destroyed it and stomped on it.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I thought it muddled the thesis statement. And I just did not enjoy it.
Oh,
And
I totally agree about it being muddled. This film tried to do so many things and did not really succeed much at all at any of them.
yes, and with most films, I've experienced films from like just plot standpoints and comedy standpoints and all other standpoints.
I can agree with that sentiment that you experienced film.
Yeah, where the first half is very good and then the second half is really bad. Like even with a film like Girls Trip, the first half was balls to the walls funny, but the second half just really kicked up the melodrama. This is obviously a different beast, but oh man, it was just the reason this film was bad. The reason this went from a 5 to a 1 was because this film dealt with a lot of the things that this film challenged me the first half because it took my Asian background and examined it in an uncomfortably close level. There was also a cinematic sort of thing, a character writing kind of thing that I feel very, very strongly about. Something that there's an element to this film that hits me very personally. It's something that I think about very deeply in a philosophical level. And I feel like they didn't treat it very delicately. And in the second half, to quote Brie Larson from a interview, this felt like a personal attack.
Interesting.
There's an interview of the actress who played Captain Marvel.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm curious if your strong distaste for the second half has to do with the message of the film?
No.
Is it that you don't agree with it, or is it just...
It's just that there was too much plot, and the plot development did not make any sense.
I think we can agree on that, yeah.
It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at with where I was saying in my words, failure of communication and storytelling.
But it's interesting how you thought the second half redeemed the film. But
okay, I'm maybe over speaking it. When I say second half, I more mean like one scene and one line that I thought was
really?
like, oh,
you could single out one scene and one line. Interesting.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, okay.
Okay. This is all good stuff for spoiler talk. So I kind of want to touch on some elements that are that I'm comfortable talking in the non-spoiler section.
Yes.
This soundtrack has been getting a lot of buzz. I thought it was okay.
It was okay. I agree.
It's okay.
It was not. It felt overkill for this movie.
I agree.
Like it.
I think the strong suit, in my opinion, is that all the tracks feel distinct. And I like that there are different textures that are being experimented. But at the same time, they didn't quite mean much to the scene. They didn't add much to the scenes, and they were
I don't remember just any of the music being all that distinct. It all felt like the same sort of slush to me.
Interesting. It's the timbre. Yeah, no, this is, I think on Rate Your Music, the letterboxed of music, you can say. This album, the soundtrack album, is rated very highly. It's ranked.
I can understand that. It
on the year-end list.
It feels like
all albums.
It feels like it would be very trendy. Like if I was listening to this music in isolation, I'd be like, that's nice.
Right. Well, maybe it's because I knew that people were talking about the soundtrack that made me pay more attention to it. But I agree. If I hadn't known about it, I would have been like, that didn't fit the movie very much.
Yeah. One of the reasons I feel like I find myself saying that is because I'm comparing this to films that treat... No, not at all. Music that... Films that do movies in this genre that treat its music very differently. Where they go for more of a realist tone.
Right.
It might be that I'm not as familiar with the style. Like I'm familiar with like Ozo's tone, where it's very understated and it's much more about the scenery and the present moment. And here it's just like the pacing is just compared to Ozu going a million miles an hour.
Well, I honestly don't think the comparison with Ozu is too fair, but
It's not,
I can
but
understand
that's-
why you're
Yeah,
you're grabbing
yeah.
towards Ozu. Is because you probably haven't been exposed to as many of this type of Asian cinema as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. What? Oh yeah, well, no. Okay, I was about to jump on a certain topic, but that's for spoiler stuff. Yeah, I can't say I've seen too much of this either. I will recommend some Korean films that, if you like Minari, and I think this is safe for the non-spoiler section because these are pretty clear parallels. There's a film called Poetry. It's very good. It's about an old woman who may be suffering from early signs of dementia, and it's very good. It doesn't feel baity. It's literally like poetic. Like she takes a poetry class and then stuff happens and it's super understated. It's by the same director that did a film called Burning, which I love. It's one of my favorite Korean films ever, but I wouldn't recommend Burning when comparing with this movie. I'd recommend Poetry, and then I would recommend Shoplifters and probably other Koreeda films, but I haven't seen those, so I can't really speak much. But Shoplifters is pretty good. Or like, I thought about Parasite, but they're pretty they're kind of leagues away.
Parasite's pretty different, yeah.
Which Parasite's also a film Parasite is a film where I shared the same sentiment as you. I gave it the exact same star rating as you, a 3.5, and I said I appreciate this film more than I love it.
Now that since you gave it 1 star, I might have the courage to give it maybe 3 stars.
Well, I appreciate the you got to be more savage in the future. You gotta just rip it.
Part of it is like, okay, if I had a really strong opinion, I would not have a problem. But a lot of my feelings on this movie are, I'm not feeling it, and I don't know why. So I would love for there to be an opportunity for me to like the movie more.
Well, that ship has sailed for me. No chance.
Okay.
No chance. On that note, I think we should dive into spoilers.
Okay.
No, before we go into spoilers, there is one more thing I want to say. Here's the thing. Over the years, I've gotten very, very jaded about the Oscars because, networks and film studios actually have to campaign for certain movies to go on. Like, I'm thinking of Ending Things didn't even get a single nomination just because Netflix did not put it in their for your consideration list. Adam from yourmoviesucks.org brings a very good point where he looked at, and I'm thinking of Ending Things was his favorite film of last year for good reason, because it's Charlie Kaufman. But he looked at the best editing category, and he said that none of the films in this category come close to what I'm thinking of Ending Things does. And that is the saddest part. Like, maybe it's a little too niche for Best Picture, but at least you can acknowledge it for something like Best Editing, where it's just so damn obvious that it's so clear. And I know I'm getting on a tangent about I'm thinking of Ending Things, but bringing it back to this film, the Oscars are also historically known for keeping up with media and political trends. And one of the recent topics is Stop Asian Hate.
I was wondering that too.
Which is why I'm thinking why this film has kind of a strong chance of winning.
This pick almost feels like a political move from the Academy.
The nomination is.
Yeah.
The nomination is, absolutely. But actually, no, this is good because I'm going to... The thing you said about this feeling like an Oscar bait, I'm going to say this. It's not about the Oscar bait. It's because this was definitely a Korean film made for a mostly Korean... Actually, no, this did premiere in Sundance.
I was wondering that and looked up on the internet to see, because I was confused throughout the whole movie. Is this an American film or a Korean film? And I just glancing at the Wikipedia page, I wasn't able to tell. What would you say?
Based on this genre of film that I've seen, I would say this film is more catered towards Korean audience because a lot of the family dynamic is not friendly for people who don't know the sort of Asian background. In this case, I can say that Korean and Chinese, there's a lot of similarities between how this family interacts. So I could resonate very personally. But The thing that you're calling Oscar baity, I would call Korean melodrama, because another big
That makes sense. That makes so much sense. Okay,
exactly.
that clicked a lot for me
Excellent
when you
I'm
pointed to
glad.
that, because wow. Okay, that makes everything in this movie makes so much more sense.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Okay.
But you might love the movie, dear audience, and that is okay. More power to you. I wish I loved it as much as you.
If you're if you're listening to this right now and then you have the question, should I see this movie? And you somehow are still listening to this. If you're interested, watch it. That would be my
That's
suggestion.
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, that's all I want to say before going into spoilers. So let's go into spoilers.
All right. 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say the first thing that came up. The scene where the grandma has the stroke is the scene that totally lost me, and the rest of the film did not redeem it.
Okay.
It when I recall because I rate films on Letterboxd, there's that scale of like, as the film's going on, what would I rate this? Like, I try not to do it, but sometimes that scale just sneaks up in my brain.
It happens to me too, because we both rate every film,
and I care about my ratings. It's the thing. But for me, I felt myself going from a 5-star to a 3.5 to a 2 to a 1.5 and to a 1. I felt all of that throughout the second half of the film, and the reason I said that things felt very personal for me, and the one element that really gets on my nerves is the portrayal of old people and just treating them not well in a character's writing standpoint. It's like they had to insert that stroke just to add some sort of emotion.
Could you clarify, is it the characters who aren't treating them well or the writers who aren't treating them well?
I would say it's the writers.
Okay.
Because the characters treated her as nicely as possible.
Yeah.
But like, it's so heartbreaking to see, the kid finally liking the grandma. And I really like that arc in the first half. We can debate about that. But then once she has the stroke, the kids don't get it. And they try to touch on that a tiny bit, but it didn't really go anywhere, because in the end, you still see the little kid blocking off the grandma and saying, "No, grandma, please don't leave." So that was super underdeveloped. It was just there to create some sort of emotional arc, because they had in my opinion, they had a really grounded film in the first half. And then at some point they were like, "Ooh, not enough drama. Let's just flex our melodrama muscles." What are your opinions on that? Because I have a lot to say, but I feel like I don't want to dominate this conversation.
On what specifically? Because there's so much. Like the betrayal of the.
I don't know. If what I'm saying isn't, you can't bounce off of that, then allow me to continue. A little. Okay, never mind.
Keep going, because I want to hear more of what you have to say.
At some point, you need to tell me what that one line of the film that got you was.
Okay, I'll go ahead and explain that then.
Sure,
the one line, I don't remember the one line, but I remember the scene. The scene was the breakup scene.
No.
And it was the line about, and so you chose you chose the farm over our family. And
yeah,
I really respected the wife's reasoning for, even though things were going so well, that she said, "Oh, well, when things don't go well, we don't work." And she's like, "Yeah, so that's why I'm leaving." Because
I see.
So I appreciated that moment, and that was like, "Oh, okay." Now, when I say that's the thesis of the film, I say that with as much good intentions as possible, because that's like one thing the film is trying to touch on, alongside with the grandmother plot between the son and like
the son's heart,
and like all the weird stuff about religion, which is oddly, I have no idea what they're trying to touch on with religion.
We'll talk about that.
There's a lot of undeveloped.
I got you covered about the religion.
Okay,
stuff.
good.
I got you covered.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I also saw on Wikipedia this was somewhat autobiographical.
No way.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
that makes it an interesting question of like, is this just like stuff that happened in his childhood that he's just in the scripts because
that does make things confusing.
Like, yeah, because like, is it just like this was in my childhood and I don't know what to think about it? Because that's what it comes off as. Like,
right.
All of the religion in this movie is dealt with a lot of skepticism, and there's almost no resolution as to how any of that stuff is to be dealt with. And also like this community of people where they're living are painted as oddly ignorant in a way that's almost insulting.
That's so interesting.
And
I would have never thought that.
Yeah, I had a hard time.
That doesn't seem like something Mark would say. This is not you. I'm kidding. But because we've had talks about, sensitivity and stuff. And I would have never thought that the portrayal of the Arkansasians here would rub you that way.
Well, it's not like the last movie we saw where it's like, oh, that made me uncomfortable. It was like, I don't really know what to do with this portrayal. Like,
okay,
I don't know. You said you had a lot to say about it, so.
I don't think I have a lot to say, but it's going to make a lot of sense when I explain it. But I'm really interested in how you felt about the breakup scene. Because, see, this is a moment where my personal feelings and who I side with in this film kind of comes into play. I actually like, personally, the headstrong nature of the husband. And I think maybe I've dealt with similar talks where I've had people who were the wife in this story giving me this talk about, like not being trustworthy and stuff. And I guess if this conversation was dealt in I guess if it weren't just thrown in there, for me, that conversation was a bit thrown in there. And like, if I think it vibed with you because, the sentiment was very nice and it did kind of wrap up sort of a thesis. But for me, first, I resonate with the main character, the husband, a lot. But at the same time, I feel like over the second half, there's a lot of times where he didn't have much screen time, or like the film tried to antagonize him because of how he felt about the exorcism or the religion stuff, about this one coworker who like brings holy water and shit. So it feels like the film tried to antagonize him, and then on top of not giving him that much to do, and then this breakup scene, it just made me really side with the husband. And I feel like it's sort of a departure from the way the family operated at first. But I like, that's why films exist, because we get to a certain point where we get to see something new about the family and how they interact. But this particular argument didn't feel like one that sort of gelled with what happened earlier, because I liked how I liked that constant struggle at the beginning to keep together. It didn't seem like the events that day that led to the breakup argument were sort of earth-shattering enough to really lead them to that point. And I think maybe it's because I've seen Asian melodrama, but that just struck me as a deeply, deeply melodramatic moment where like people who have gone through stuff like a divorce, or maybe, why is the word coming up, flirting with the idea of it? That's a terrible use of word, but like maybe coming close to a divorce would resonate with it in a slightly manipulative way. It didn't gel for me. Maybe it's because I can see the Asian tropes. But
yes,
anyway,
seeing it through Asian tropes is, I'm not familiar with those tropes because I haven't seen a lot of Asian melodrama, but I've seen enough to know what
you're
you're
not missing
talking
out on
about.
much.
Did I tell you once? This is somewhat of a tangent. I tried to watch as much of a Korean drama that I could stomach, like a really low budget show, just because I was so interested in like this type of media that was so foreign to me. Like
that would do it. Korean dramas are the pinnacle of that shit.
Yeah, like I think the show I called was like Boys Over Flowers or something.
Oh man, I don't know what that is, and that sounds like a time.
Yeah, it was like very, very cheesy acting and stuff, and I mean, not anything.
Oh yeah,
but like comparing it, I found myself like wanting to parody that style because like it's just so interesting. Anyway, putting things in the lens of Asian melodrama makes it makes sense why you saw it as not as. It makes sense why you saw it differently. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like they came up with that argument scene and they're like, we're gonna shove it in somehow. And how do I know this? Because this film uses a literary device that I've seen so much, and it's done. The moment I saw it, I'm like, oh boy, this film is about to like just fall to pieces. And that is that quick establishing shot of the weather being very hot.
Oh, interesting.
Because especially in books, like The Great Gatsby is a prime example. A lot of the dramatic moments and the climaxes happen on the hottest day of the summer. It's a very common backdrop for something like that. And so the moment I saw it, I'm like, oh, they're going to do something. Something's going to happen. And because I saw that and I fixated on that, I noticed how the writers toyed with the device. How like they went to the city and the sun's part
and then all that good stuff happened. Okay,
and then
interesting.
I'm like, okay, so if you're gonna play with it, I hope just to see this family don't do anything mean. And then the whole grandma burns down the fucking house, and I'm like, no, that was stupid. But also, so the argument scene also played in with my expectations towards the weather being very hot.
Okay.
Yeah, so that whole thing was just a mishmash, and it didn't, because the first half of the film I appreciated because it didn't have many of the literary devices. You know, I'm like, oh, there's this sign of, you know, the grandmother's going to move in. That's probably going to happen in the halfway part of the film, and it's going to be some big conflict. But no, the grandma just moves in, and there are these very interesting character dynamics, at least for me, because I resonated with a lot of it. And it's so natural. She brings her weird little Korean game. Oh, and I remember playing those games with my grandmother. And I feel like I'm about to start gushing about my Asian background. But there was one thing I wanted to say, and I'm having a bit of a brain fart that has to do with I guess the second half of the movie, and I can't quite remember, unfortunately. But I don't want to get into the Asian. Oh yeah, no, I do remember now. It was about your experience with Asian tropes. Have you heard of a film called Train to Busan?
No.
Okay, it is this big. It was a big hit as far as a Korean film is concerned, because probably not as big as Parasite, but arguably so, because it is a Korean horror film. It's a Korean zombie film. And the whole film is like, it's like their take on The Walking Dead, where like the people are more cruel and more, you know, interesting than the zombies. But it's just the most melodramatic shit you will ever see. Except Train to Busan does it so almost with like this fervor that it's kind of good. And I think we should watch it because I want you to experience that movie and tell me what you think.
Okay.
Because I think it's a good case, but it's so telling of what Korean melodrama is. some scenes will work for you that didn't work for me. And some scenes will work for me that didn't work for you. Because that's how many of those melodramatic scenes there are. You can imagine it with like a zombie premise, like, oh, you know, stuff happens, infection, disease.
One thing I think I mentioned this earlier. One thing I found myself thinking throughout this movie was, man, making movies is hard.
Really? You felt that?
Because I was thinking to myself, why aren't I feeling the magic? Like, why am I not connecting with these characters as much as the movie wants me to?
You know what this also reminded me of? It's a film that we've seen. A Brighter Summer Day.
Which movie is that again?
Is that title not? No, because the title is very vague. It's the 4-hour Chinese film.
I know we've seen it. Oh, right. Yeah, I remember we had a hard time connecting with that too, but it's, I mean, totally different film.
Yeah, well, there is a similarity in that the first half kind of hit some nostalgia points for me, but the second half lost me. But, you know, I wasn't in a gang when I was a kid. So compared to this film, like that film was just, oh, cool. This film is set in Taiwan and I am reminded of some parts of my childhood. This film was directly, it feels like my soul was being ripped open in the first half.
A movie where that was true for me was Boyhood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where like, the funny thing about Boyhood is the age of the protagonist was born exactly the year I was born.
Oh, that's crazy.
What made that movie magical for me was he grew up with all of the same technology and trends that I grew up with.
So Boyhood really worked for you.
Boyhood worked. Like, that was magic for me. Because like I had a very similar experience growing up as he did. With like separated parents and I mean not exactly the same, but just having a few things really line up made the film, it worked a lot better for me. So I can definitely understand how this film might have worked for you in the same way.
Yeah, Boyhood didn't really click with me. I think I gave it a four stars, and those were like appreciation stars. Yeah, because I like what the film did. But yeah, this film ripped me open in the first half, and then I guess sewn up all the wounds really horribly in the second half. to put it really graphically. Yeah, I think before I go into that, let's talk about religion and what that's all about.
So I think it should be said, you work a church job right now, so your own relationship.
That doesn't matter. This is not relevant at all.
Oh, it's not relevant? Okay.
Not relevant at all. I mean, I recognized all of the hymns, which was nice.
Oh, that's funny.
If I played that, yeah. But it's about Korea.
Okay.
Korea is a Christian country. Like, deeply Christian. Like, more so than you can imagine. Like, everyone, like, going to church is prideful there. Like, people take pride in going to Christian church.
I didn't know that.
But a lot of people, like, going to a music school with Korean pianists, it suddenly the entire dynamic becomes so obvious. You have some that actually believe in this stuff, and you have some that are just doing it, like going through the motions, because it's what Koreans do. And so that's why faith is challenged in this, because any Korean movie would do it. And I think this film did it quite well. That's why I didn't comment on, the whole thing about it being left open, because there is no answer to this, because every Korean struggles with this.
Okay. All right. So, I can understand that.
Yeah. It being left open is nice. And I actually thought that having been on that side of, not necessarily in a church community, but just having heard what people talk about, when they see that I'm Asian and stuff, I think the way the white people talk to the Korean family, it's stuff that I've experienced.
Oh, I totally understand. Yeah. I understood that. I understood that aspect of the film perfectly. That was, I think, really nice. I feel like
nice.
As weird as it feels to say that, given that, like what they were presenting. It was like, yeah, that's hard stuff that
Right. I
they
appreciated
they
it
dealt
too.
with in a pretty good way. And now that you're talking about it more, it makes sense why, to me, a lot of the American characters in this film came off as caricatures. But it makes sense why now, because as you're saying, in Korea, faith is such a pre-established thing. So questioning that, I can understand how that's important to this film.
Yeah, and you see, why did the mom suddenly want to go to church? It's because that's how Korean people meet their friends in their communities. You know, that's why it's like, oh, you don't have friends? Let's go to church.
Okay.
That is something that's very, very established there.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, but then
they were
church,
even sending their kids to church to make friends. That makes so much more sense now. Yeah.
Exactly. I actually really liked... Did I like all the white characters? I liked all the white characters in this movie. Like, for example, Paul, the guy who worked with the father, he was very exaggerated and kind of a caricature. But I really liked how he's kind of different. Like, he's both crazier than I thought, but yet he's also more likable than a character of his type would make me feel. Like, I understand why the father hired him, because he's not harmless. And that I think was communicated quite clearly. So maybe you feel differently.
I'm not quite sure how to feel about him. There's one scene that comes to mind where I remember feeling confused.
Which scene was that?
There was a scene where they argued about how far apart to plant the plants.
Oh yeah, that was odd.
And okay, this happened several times in the movie where there was a conflict, they had a disagreement, and it was pointing to some thematic thing in the movie. Like for this, it was about, the Korean way of doing things versus the American way of doing things.
So I'm going to quickly, just kindly interrupt you there and say quickly my interpretation of this, because I'm afraid I'll forget. Sure. I'm a bit scatterbrained today.
Okay, sure.
I think that scene was because the father kind of coddled the land a little too much, so he wants to get the most out of the land. So like he's like, oh, all these 50 acres are mine. I better plant my plants close together. But I guess that is true, like how you don't see the father changing the distance of the crops.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's
true.
Okay, I think how you explain the scene there, that makes a lot more sense. But what I had trouble was trying to understand what version were they trying to communicate thematically. And part of the reason I felt like I was so confused was they'd never resolved that conflict, or they would present a conflict and then we wouldn't really see how the characters reacted to it very clearly. Like I specifically remember when the American dude was like, "Oh, you're planting them too close," and so I was immediately thinking, "Oh, so what's he gonna do? Is he gonna take them out of the ground and plant them farther, or is he gonna just like plant another one even closer? Like which direction is he gonna go?" And I remember, I think he looked at the plants, and then it just cuts to something else. Like, what? So what happened? And I kept finding the film doing that again and again, where
I'm okay with that, especially that scene.
Okay.
I think that is the thesis. I think it is that coexisting. I like that it's very vague. See, I like the movie when it's vague. When the movie became too melodramatic and thematic, that's when it lost me. So we have the opposite experience.
Yeah, I mean, okay, in my own trying to understand why I have this uncomfortability, maybe it is just because I don't like it being vague, but that's the thing. I like abstract vague things, but this instant of it just didn't work for me. Okay, here's another example. I had another example and I lost it.
That's okay.
Okay, let's move on and maybe I'll think of it.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the title of the movie. So Minari is this water celery plant that the grandma grows. You know what this reminds me of? It's another movie where an old person talks about something that starts with the letter M as this main theme of the movie that connects everything together, literally. It's a movie you really, really, really like.
Ponyo?
Oh, I haven't seen Ponyo. But no, that wasn't the one.
That's Ham. There's like a connection between the characters with Ham in that movie. It starts with the letter M. Is it Ghibli?
No. It is animated.
It is animated, okay. Okay, I'm gonna be mad, but go ahead and tell me.
It's Your Name.
I have no memory of this.
It's okay. It's a plot point that, because I've seen Your Name twice, the second time was when that part of the movie really, really hit me. And I had forgotten about it too from my first viewing. So I totally understand.
The food isn't mochi, is it?
It's not food.
Oh, it's not food. Okay.
It's okay. So the old grandma who, okay, I shouldn't spoil things. No, the grandma of the girl takes her to a forest and talks about the concept of Musubi. And she says Musubi is the thread that links everything together. It is time, it is our relationships, and it is everything. And then we see how the Musubi really comes into play. In one of the more fantastical scenes in Your Name, we literally see a thread because the grandmother's whole Musubi talk pays off. In this film, the Minari does not pay off. It's dumb.
Well, it's serving a different function that's meant to be interpreted.
I know.
And whether or not that's successful kind of depends on if you see it, I feel like. Which at the point,
I can't say I don't see it, but I also can't say I see it.
It has something to do with the grandmother. I don't know.
Okay, this is, and you're talking about unresolved scenes. This is a big one that bugs me. It's not because the grandmother's planting Minari. That would be fine. But it's the problem is they keep on getting water from that creek. And then they see a snake in one scene.
Yeah!
And so something gets teased.
And it's like, oh, are they going to get bitten? And then they don't.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you think that's just like a subversion of the trope right there? Like,
I think they're trying to subvert something.
It's some sort of subversion going on right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Get that thing out of my face. I hate that. Like I hate the snake scene. It was so bad. Okay. I want to go back to the scene where the grandmother has a stroke. And again, I think, man, I've always felt really bad for old people suffering in life and in movies. I mean, I've seen Amor, and it still haunts me to this day. But that film treats it so freaking delicately and so nicely and so hauntingly.
Well, in Hanukkah, I don't know if you would call Hanukkah treating things with delicacy, but
this is the most. I mean, he does, the most tender Hanukkah film, and I haven't seen all his work. But
it is tender, but I mean, Hanukkah is far from tender. Right. That's not what he does.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I went into Amor thinking, oh, it's going to be a tender Hanukkah, and then I let my guard down too much, and I'm still paying for that.
Hanukkah, but, I think that's the most traumatic movie I've ever seen, to be honest.
Yeah, same. Yeah, one of our friends, I would constantly, we would make it a joke to constantly remind ourselves of a scene in Amor, and we would just sort of cringe and panic, be in a state of panic together. It became a thing for us. It was so bad. Wow. I don't know why we did that to ourselves.
Yeah, if a film is to give you PTSD, it's that film. Horror don't got nothing on Hanukkah.
But that's the problem. All the reviews on Amor are like, oh yeah, it was really moving. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, anyway, okay, enough about Hanukkah.
Yeah. If you can't tell, we like Hanukkah.
Yeah, exactly. The thing about I feel like having a stroke is such an easy thing to happen in a movie. It's like, oh, let's do something bad to the old person. Let her have a stroke. I don't know. That just seems like what this film is doing. Also, I had to justify this in my own head because remember how there's that the night before, or what I initially thought was the night before, there was this whole talk about the kid seeing heaven and not wanting to see heaven. And then the film made it look like the next day was when the grandma had the stroke. And I had to tell myself to not believe that. I had to tell myself, wait, let's be real here. There's no way this movie would be so tropey to have the grandmother have a stroke right after this kind of powerful scene where the kid wants to continue living.
I think that's what was implied. Like the kid went down, they had that middle of the night talk about heaven, then
the grandmother paid
which
for
by
it
the
or
way,
something.
I kind of like that scene. It was
I like that scene. I mean, I told you everything before the grandmother having the stroke was great.
Okay. And then I think it was implied that kid goes down to sleep with grandma, and then kid wakes up and grandma has had a stroke. Yeah, that's how I read it. Is that how you read it?
This is technically how I should read it too.
I see.
But at that point, I loved the film so much that I was like, the only way I can be okay with this is if I imagined a time lapse in my head.
Interesting. Okay.
Because that's how much I did not like the idea of it happening the morning after.
Okay, I can use this to talk about what I was trying to get at earlier with
sweet, perfect.
With the failed storytelling and communication. Okay. So, two things. One was when that scene happened, when the kid woke up, he looked around kind of confused, and I was like, "What?" And then I
think I know why.
The camera saw that grandma wasn't moving. First thing I thought was, oh shit, grandma died.
Right.
And then the kid goes out to get his sister, comes back, and he asks, Grandma, why did you wet the bed?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this moment in particular, I think, is more just a thing of, I feel awful for saying this, but the kid actors were not great.
Wow.
I did not connect with the performances. They were good, but they could have been a lot better.
They weren't the Florida Project.
Oh,
man. Oh, man.
Did you like
the kids in that? So here's the thing. The boy in this movie has been getting so much praise.
Oh. I'm about to be canceled.
I agree, though. When I watched this, I thought it was okay. His performance was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. I thought it could be. It could, like the scene with just children. They just weren't very strong.
Right.
Part of it could be that.
Yeah.
Well, part of it, for me, wonders if it has to do with the bilingualness of the sister.
I was just gonna say that I love the bilingualness. I thought the choices to use bilingual, to use the different languages, was way more interesting than the kids acting.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it hindered their acting.
Maybe.
Because
I don't know.
Because unfortunately, this is partly due to the writing but the character of the daughter was not very developed. But I never saw her more than just like a sulky teenager.
Yeah, I agree.
And part of that was because she spoke a lot of English. I guess she more came off as like an American sulky teenager, which is really unfortunate because I feel like there's a lot more depth to their character they could have explored. But
yeah. I
mean, it's also true that this film tries to do way too much and doesn't succeed at most of it. But anyway, getting back on topic. So part of it is the children's acting was not the greatest. So I didn't understand immediately that the reason the kid was confused was because grandma peed the bed. And that didn't become clear until the kids said that.
Oh,
yeah. He didn't pat the bed. He just sort of looked around and was concerned.
Okay, so I actually thought his performance was fine there because I think it's because he smelled it. It was smell.
Oh, did you see him smell it? Maybe
I
just missed that.
Smell it, but I think from the way he moved his head, I think it was communicated kind of clearly.
Okay, it could be a cultural thing where like the body language of smelling something is different. I don't know. That's just speculation.
No, I don't think so. I think
that's a little weird.
No, that's taking a little far, the cultural thing.
Yeah.
I just because I saw the pee.
Oh, you saw it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it hit me a little faster.
Anyway, taking a little bit further, I think there's a scene right after or close to it where the daughter is talking with the mom, and the daughter is like, "What happened to grandma?" And the mom says, "Oh, she had a stroke." The daughter says, "Why?" And the mom says, "Because it's my fault." And I thought, "Excuse me, what? Why? Why are you saying that?"
Because melodrama.
Okay, is it her fault because it's her fault that she brought her to America? Or is it her fault because, like, I think that's the implied reason, because, oh, we brought her to America and now she feels horrible because that somehow was responsible. But was it like, I found myself in the moment thinking, wait, did I miss something? Did she like not handle her pills properly? Does it have something to do with like they weren't getting enough water for her?
No, that's just
like
how melodrama is dealt.
I wanted to know, like, why does she think it's her fault?
Right. I would have preferred the generic people get old sometimes. Or something like that.
Yeah, like she felt responsible for this somehow, and we got no explanation of why. And I feel like maybe the reason we got no explanation of why is the film assumed that we might know already. And so it felt like it didn't need to tell us. That's a guess.
It's just complete melodrama for melodrama's sake. It's like, let's give the audience the answer they're not expecting. Like, oh, putting the blame to yourself. It's literally just for the line, because it's my fault. Yeah,
that's a really cynical view, though. That would mean like they're treating their characters as like.
I'm telling you, when I say the movie shat the bed after Grandma had the stroke, I mean, like, I see all the lines afterwards as just heartstring fodder or whatever. I just really see it that way.
Okay, well, here's a moment that came before the stroke that is also. I wonder if this moment worked for you, where it was equally as confusing as this moment. The moment where
the stick?
No.
Okay. What a good
the phone call, when the phone call happened and the dad got a no for, I think, a no to not sell his vegetables.
Yeah.
And then he like gets real angry.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know more about that. Like, why did they say no? Did they say no because his vegetables weren't good enough? Did they say no because...
They explained. It's because...
Did they explain?
Yeah, they prefer getting their food from California because it's a state they've heard of.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just missed that explanation then. Okay, that's on me then. Because I was thinking well, were they being racist against Koreans? The
problem with this type of, at least the first half of this film, this type of downplaying all of like the plot, is that it's very easy to miss stuff like that. That definitely, that happens. Maybe it's time to talk about. Okay, so what did you think about the scene with the stick? It was it was pretty neutral.
I try not to have a strong opinion about it because I feel like it's something that's very culturally significant in Korea.
And China.
And like, for me, it's a bit of a non-issue because, like, of course, that's not a good thing to beat your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have that for me and my family. Like, I was never physically beat in that way.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna completely interrupt my current train of thought because I suddenly came up with 2 recommendations.
Oh, okay.
One of them we should see. One of them we've done a video for.
Oh.
I kind of want to recommend Only Yesterday. It's not that close at all, but it gave me similar vibes.
Now you mentioned that film, that's a film that, wow, that's actually really close to this film in
Oh, really? You
genre.
think so? Good.
Yeah, like it does
'Cause
a
I think
lot of the
about it,
things this film
yeah.
tries to do and does it a lot better. It has a lot more focus.
Really? I would
Yeah.
say that the first half of Minari actually hits harder for me than Only Yesterday.
Huh, okay.
And if
Makes
had it
sense.
continued like that, it would have been a film that was very, very special for me.
Hmm.
Yeah, like an all-timer, but didn't happen. The other film, though, we need to watch this movie. This is one of my favorite movies of the last decade that you've never heard of because it was a recent discovery. It's called Take Shelter. It's a movie
Okay.
starring Michael Shannon. And this movie has one of the rarest things that has ever happened to me, which is an ending that I hated. I absolutely despised it and I know that when you see it, you will despise it too, which is why after I mentioned this, you're going to forget the name of the movie, and I'm not going to bring it up for a while so you wouldn't know that this is the movie I'm talking about with the ending, because now you're going to be expecting an ending.
Okay. We'll see
But
how
this
well
is
my memory is.
I just need to tell you this phenomenon because it's fascinating. This is a movie where the ending is so bad. I thought it was so bad. And then suddenly, somehow it came up with an interpretation for it. And not only did it completely justify the movie, I realized that I've been seeing the ending completely wrong, and it became a masterpiece.
Ooh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. And it became incredible. Yeah. It's a movie called Take Shelter. And the reason I recommend it is because it deals with a family unit in a really, really intimate way. And that one has slow American indie vibes, like along the line of American Honey, but more about a family. And
Okay.
it's super good. That's recommendation. There. Okay.
Speaking of
Yeah.
I'll just say this and then continue. Speaking of slow vibes, did it feel like to you this movie needed to be an hour longer?
Yes.
This film
Yes.
felt like it was cut down from 3 hours.
I agree. I feel like it could. I would have loved to bathe into that. So I don't think stretching out the plot points in the second half would make the film any better, because I think those plot points were flawed to begin with.
Mm.
Because I just think that what they did, what didn't make much sense. And
Yeah, the plot didn't need development. The pacing needed development. Like the
well,
yeah,
what
I
I'm
can't think of a
saying
better
is,
word for it than that. Yeah.
even if this were 3 hours, I think with the way the second half worked, I probably still wouldn't have liked it that much.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't have been a 1 star. I agree the pacing of the second half contributes a lot to why I rate it so low. But it would have, yeah. If it had an hour longer, I probably would have given it a solid 3. But yeah. So I think the scene with the stick is a really good just summary. I think that was the climax of the whole film for me, at least in terms of the way it hits a lot of personal nerves. Because on the one hand, well, so my grandma couldn't read, and my grandma
Oh, wow.
late in
Okay.
her life did feel like she was incompetent in some ways, like
Which
she
is
didn't
very similar to the grandmother in this film.
exactly. She didn't really feel that, but like there will be times where it comes through. In her. Okay, I started it again.
Okay, good. I'm still recording.
Okay, yay. Okay, continuing my train of thought. So, yeah, my grandmother couldn't read, and it's kind of complicated because some of the ways in which the parentals in this movie would slightly jab at the grandmother's ways and like ignore her, like in the stick scene, where they just, she's there, but she's trying to contribute to the conversation, but they're kind of just ignoring her. That reminds me of how my dad kind of treated my grandmother. I mean, I think he was way nicer, but that's something that has kind of haunted. Yeah, she's passed away since, but I do think about how it's some of my deepest thoughts are like how I would have done things differently had I been the main person who took care of her when I was like, if I were the one, but it this film handled the love, like when the mom first saw the grandmother, like she teared up, and that was really nice. But it seemed like we later find out that's kind of because the grandmother reminded her of Korea.
Yeah, the grandmother was very much a stand-in for Korean culture.
Right. And, the red pepper made her cry, and the pepper flakes, which, Korean pepper flakes, my goodness. I can see why. That's such an integral part of their food. I didn't know anchovies were a big thing, though, so the more you know. But, yeah. Then, later on, she kind of just becomes... the other thing about... I didn't like how after the stroke, she still wanted to work because I'm sure this is universal. Old people who live, especially old women who have lived their lives sort of like working, doing housework, they can't stop even when they get super old. They just can't stop. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have similar experience. You probably do.
I have... It's actually very similar experience. My grandmother, my grandmother lived with my mother for the last 5-6 years of her life.
I remember that phase. I remember.
Yeah, and she lived with my mother. She moved in with my mother after she had already had one stroke, and had dementia throughout the whole time that she lived with my mother. And she moved in when I was a senior in high school.
Damn.
Yeah, so for most of the time she was living with my mother, I was away at college.
Right.
However, it was very different from the experiences in this movie. So for that reason, I didn't really quite connect, because my own grandmother was already pretty far off by the time she started living with us.
Right, because with dementia added to it, it becomes way more complicated.
It's a whole different ball game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that is pretty different. But
I will say that at least how they depicted dementia in this movie does not relate much at all to my own experience with living with a person in dementia.
Well, no, the grandmother didn't really have dementia.
Oh, right. I meant post-stroke.
Yeah.
I said the wrong thing. I meant post-stroke.
Okay.
Ness. There's a term for it, but
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not very fair to say, because like every person's experience with caring for an older person who has had a stroke is going to be different. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, with the whole setup of, like being a really hot day and how shit's about to go down, I knew the moment they left her alone at home that something wasn't. Something's going to happen.
There's a bit of a troubling reading with the ending, though. There's a theme in the movie, how like the grandmother represents Korea, and a lot of the dynamic between the son and the grandmother is, you never should have come here, and which is eventually resolved, but
that scene's so stupid when the son just whispers to her.
Like,
I hate it.
Okay, so. Did I don't know if rather not to call this a redemption arc, but did the healing of the relationship, did that process work for you post grandma having a stroke in the movie?
No, but I really liked how the grandmother and the boy grew closer in the first half of the movie, because I think at least from my reading of the first half of the movie, the grandmother only represented Korea from the mother's point of view. And for the boy, it was, yes, there was some traditional values, but she became a friend and a companion to him in a way that his parents could not offer.
I realize
really
now,
liked that.
This is something else I was confused about as to why the boy was so angry at the grandmother in the beginning. There seemed to be a very concrete reason why he didn't like her so much.
It's kind of in the culture, and that's something I cannot explain.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
Just when
That's interesting that you got it, because I feel like they tried to communicate that a little bit, and I did not get it.
Okay,
there's
I can try to explain it.
Well,
Okay,
let me try to explain
finish.
what I saw first. Like, there's one scene where the mother asks, "Why don't you want grandma to come?" And the boy says something like, "I don't quite remember what it was. Grandma makes you
as well.
Grandma makes you fight, something like that." And I was thinking, does the grandmother cause the parents to fight?
But the only scene where they have a big argument was without the grandma.
Yeah. So, like, I was totally confused when grandma came.
Holy
and
fuck.
Grandma did not start fights. Like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting because of... the grandma did not start fights like we were told.
Yeah. That's awful.
Yeah.
You're right. But I think, okay, see, I'm once again defending the first half of the movie because I liked it so much. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm just really stretching here. But I feel like the boy couldn't understand why he didn't want grandma to come. So he made up a reason. I actually believe that's what happened. Because here's the thing. In China and in Korea, there's a tendency for like grandmothers to like their grandsons. Like just grandson. It's the whole there's definitely a lot of sexism towards kids. But
you like preferring the male over the female? Is that what you mean?
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So grandmothers in general prefer sons. Or prefer the grandson. That's why the grandmother showered so much attention to the grandson.
I'm actually quite familiar with that concept, oddly enough.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. But that's also why the daughter didn't get as much attention. But so when she came, I think the boy got really mad because first of all, the grandma had really old-fashioned ways. Like she would bring these weird DVDs and make this weird medicine for him. And just nothing was fun. Mm-hmm. Also, she smelled like old people, which I get as a kid why you wouldn't like that smell. But I think it's just, that thing where like you bring a kid to a party and then the kid gets embarrassed by all the attention and just kind of runs away. That's something that happens with toddlers and young boys a lot. I think when the grandmother gives the grandson that much attention and the grandson knows that because of it's in the culture, it's him rebelling against the attention. It's him being unfamiliar with that concept. And so he really needed to welcome the grandma in later on in the film, and they became good buddies, at least until the point where the film lost me.
I can buy that reading. I didn't get that reading at all, but if that is coming from a different place,
I feel it quite deeply.
Okay. Yeah.
That's me reading between the lines.
Sure.
But I remember playing like Chinese checkers and weird like military chess games with my grandma. And so when she brought the weird little Korean game, that hit home very much.
I did like how they ended up playing when he was visiting that kid's house. They ended up playing the same game. That was nice.
Oh, that was so weird though, because the boy was like, "This is a good game," and I thought he was being sarcastic, but it took me the end of the scene to be like, I think he's being serious.
Okay, that scene was really short. At first, it made it seem like the son has the upper hand, and it looked like the friend wasn't really liking it. But then he said he liked it.
Yeah. Well, the kids would play anything.
Yeah, true.
Especially, because back then, because this was apparently set in the 80s, there was one mention that this was in the 80s.
I was really confused about the time setting. Was this the 50s, the 60s, the 90s,
no, it's
the
80s?
Okay.
It's like first generation Chinese.
Okay.
Yeah. Or Korean.
I wish there had been a better time setting than that.
Yeah, so at that age, kids would play because there's this homeschooled family that goes to the church I work for, and they really limit the kids' media and internet time, and man, those kids know how to play with anything.
Man.
And so it makes sense how like this cool weird game with good components, mind you. Those cards looked fucking great. Oh my gosh, I don't know what they're made of. Yeah. As a board game fan, I kind of dug it. Yeah, so
All right.
that was really nice.
Give a
and then the
give
father.
a game review on this game in Minari.
Oh right. Maybe I should look it up. I need to know what this game is. That's probably a real game. Like it's most definitely a real
It
game.
reminded me of that Gamers Connect 4 that we play a little bit.
Oh, Nia.
Nia.
A little bit
Not
like
in
Nia.
not in any mechanical way, because I mean,
You
we
know
didn't
the material,
but the
it
material
does
looked
feel like
similar.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then the next scene, the dad shows up and he was like, there's a detail that I really like. So you know how the white boy shows the son chewing tobacco, which that's terrible and the most southern thing you can possibly wish for. But the next scene, you see the dad and he has these yellow teeth, and it's probably because he does chewing tobacco as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that subtle detail. Yeah, and I think that's kind of intentional to portray the dad as having those really brownish teeth, but yet they're all kind of nice, you know. That's one of the nicer scenes in the second half of the film.
I didn't really find the dad that nice. Well, I mean, nice in the sense of not like bad writing, but like not a nice. Well, what did you mean by nice?
Just like there wasn't anything really southern trash that the dad offered. He wasn't like the dad who's like, you know, having a midlife crisis and, you know, oh, my son's friend is here. Let me educate him about the world. But no, instead he's just like, oh, your dad's working the farm. That's cool. I mean, yes, he did look a little sketchy, but I just appreciate the film didn't.
Well, there was one detail that did demonize him that you might have missed. That was really small. The dad said, "Tell your mom I was here last night."
What?
Yeah.
I have no recollection of that.
It was really small. You probably missed it.
If that's a real scene, then that changes everything.
Yeah, they sort of made it look like he was out drinking or like banging some other chick or something. They didn't say what, but they just said, "Tell your mom I was here last night, will ya?" Or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Weird. Very weird.
Yeah, it's stuff like that makes me question, like,
could be a divorce situation.
Why was that in the movie?
Yeah, that needs to be fleshed out.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff this movie tried to do so much and didn't succeed.
Yeah, I agree. Whoa, that's a big one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoy. I think what made the stroke scene feel really mean for me was the scene where the grandmother encouraged the boy to run, like, you know, for better or for worse. But you could see how she like walks fast and like, wow. And again, I have a thing for like, I don't know, healthy old people. I look up to them and yeah, it's this whole weird thing. It happens in real life as well. But you know, just to see her just walking and I'm just like, wow, this grandma's so nice. And then she just has a stroke and I'm like, fuck this. Yeah, I'm just so sad. Like, why put me through this? And it didn't even amount to anything.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll finish a thought I had earlier.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a very heavy-handed metaphorical thing that I think they're saying with the movie, and how the grandmother metaphorically and literally burns down the farm and like destroys their lives.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
What are we supposed to take away from that?
Exactly. I don't know. People make mistakes. Is it that trite and generic?
Like, it obviously was. You could spin it like it was their fault because, like, should they have left her alone? Probably not. But could they leave her alone? Probably not. But did they even acknowledge that at all? No.
Hey, Mark, you know what it is?
What?
You know what it is?
What?
You know how the wife says it's my fault? It's actually a foreshadow. What?
That doesn't make any logical sense.
I'm kidding.
That doesn't make any logical sense, but I believe you.
You know, we might be onto something, and I hate it.
We might.
Man, this is the biggest discovery since realizing that Hayao Miyazaki was that. Anyway, spoilers.
Oh, right, from the
earwig
situation.
Yeah, no, this is big. She's apologizing in advance.
Okay,
she's
film theory time. Do you think the mother is a time traveler?
Oh, no. Good question. I'm trying to find evidence, but there's literally no other evidence. I can't riff on that.
I'm just being stupid.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then right after the burning, like we see the family like hug together. Then I'm like, oh, that's sweet, but like, why?
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's talk about the very ending. So this film decides to leave everything open, right?
Right. What was the gravestone?
What gravestone?
Did the grandma die?
There was a gravestone?
There was a headstone. There was what was the brick? He carries a brick.
Oh, they were marking where the water was. Based on the stick thing.
Oh. Cool.
Yeah, so
the grandmother didn't die.
Yeah, so the grandmother didn't die. No. That was, for whatever reason, the father decided to trust in the stick. But we didn't see the results of that. The movie just ends.
Of course not.
Like,
of course not. And then they go to the Minari place, and it's like, ooh, they must be really tasty.
And the movie ends. Like,
yeah. Oh, I think there is a symbolism with the Minari. I don't know what it is, but
there definitely is. But
because
what do you think it is?
You know, they said that it's this plant that often is mistaken as weed, or like can grow as easily as weed.
Oh, okay.
Weeds,
I think I'm remembering
weeds.
that now. It is a weed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you think they're saying like
it's apparently really delicious?
The family are weeds?
No, I think it's the grandma, because Minari obviously represents the grandmother. She's a weed, a necessary weed. Oh, I don't know. And then she burns the house down.
I mean, you could also read it. How I feel like I'm reading it is like the family is weeds, and like the Korean family in Arkansas is a weed.
I don't think the film is that malicious towards the Koreans, though.
It's not. You're right. I don't know. I don't know how to read it.
Yeah. See, that's why I bring back the Your Name thing. The Musubi is so freaking obvious what it is, and it's so great. It's like the best part about that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But oh yeah, there's also the other thing. I thought, the whole family goes to church in the first half, right? And the dad just kind of acquiesces and obliges and just does it. And then we get to the scene where Paul comes in and does the fucking thing, and he's the father was so adamantly against prayer of any sort, and I don't understand why they shove that in. Like it's not even an interesting character development. It's a sloppy character development, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, they didn't do anything with it other than he didn't like it. And that's it.
Like if he didn't like the whole holy water thing, I get it. But if he didn't like just pray with the dude. Come on, just pray with him.
I kind of took it as like he had to deal with his. Okay, this is how the movie sort of makes it look. So I don't want to say anything insensitive, but like the movie had to deal with his quote unquote bullshit for that long, like that he was just tired of it.
Yeah, I guess he had the first-hand experience with. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. With all of those scenes, I'm just constantly surprised by the portrayal of Paul, and I ended up liking him very much. Because he's freaking weird, but he seems like he has a good heart. He never did anything malicious. And the moment I saw him in the first time, maybe this is just my expectation, I just figured that he was going to betray the family in some way.
Oh,
because
interesting.
All films do that. That's a Korean melodrama moment that Yeah, that I wouldn't put it past this film to do it, but they didn't. So that's good. But yeah, him carrying the cross was
Okay,
really
here's
weird.
something. Okay, here's something that was underdeveloped and a little confusing that felt like it should have meant something, but
Okay,
never
let's
amounted to
go.
anything. Okay, so the top drawer. The top drawer
Oh, what
attacks
the
the
heck
sun.
was that?
So the top drawer attacks the sun and like makes his foot bleed. And at first I thought that was going to be the twist moment, but then the boy was fine. He just had a cut. Sounds weird. And then later, the mom tells Paul the grandmother has been staring at the drawer. And so they do a little exorcism on the drawer.
Is that why the exorcism happened?
I'm not sure. I think they made it, they said something like, oh, Paul, they were talking at dinner, and then Paul offered to do the holy water thing, and that brought them to the bedroom.
See, okay, I thought that they invited him to dinner because he was going to perform this ritual.
Oh, true. That might have been it. Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. But this is what I mean about the film not following through on stuff. Like,
yeah, no, okay. So my theory about the whole drawer thing was that was a moment for the kid and the grandma to finally become like really close because the grandmother told the kid, "You are strong." And the kid had this really, I think that's the most subtle and best moment as far as the boy's performance.
okay.
He had this look of awe towards the grandmother. We're like, did you really just say that? And I like how they didn't go for something obvious, like the kid bursting into tears or something, because kids don't really, that's not really the boy's age. Like maybe in the girl's age, like if the grandma called her strong, she'd be like, I've never heard anybody say that. But the boy's reaction in that scene was kind of great. Yeah, I like that scene because I get how it made sense. It made sense why the boy would feel that way because for the whole movie, the family calls him weak because of his weak heart.
Yeah,
And
I
so
agree.
the grandmother
I agree. That
yeah.
was nice.
So I think the drawer moment was just to build that up, and I'm okay with it.
I'm okay
like
with that part of it, but there was another part of it that was confusing to me. That okay, this may be just be connecting dots that weren't meant to be connected. But okay, so I think it's assumed that he's doing an exorcism on the house and like clearing
Or some
away whatever
blessing.
bad
Let's call it
spirit
a
is.
blessing. He mentioned an exorcism earlier, but an exorcism implies that, I don't know.
Well, wasn't he saying stuff like
grandmother.
"Get out of here in the name of Jesus"?
That's true. No,
Yeah.
right. It was an exorcism on the grandma. You're right.
Yeah, and they say several times in the movie that something bad happened there in the past.
Oh, right.
And then the friend's dad mentions that there was a suicide there by the previous tenant.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
are we supposed to read that like the top drawer was the guy who committed suicide?
No, Mark. No, that's too far.
like that's the thing. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so no, I totally understand, but I think the whole when the father of the white boy talked about the suicide, I think it's supposed to plant the idea to the viewers that the father of this family may commit suicide because of his pride. Because right before that scene, he had said that if this farm doesn't work out, please leave without me.
Okay.
So I think it's just to give us this plant this seed that goes nowhere of like, oh, the dad might off himself, which is horrible.
Funny enough, I had the suicide thought where the mom was doing something with a rope. I was wondering if that was like a subversion thing because later it showed that rope was made to make a swing set. And
how come I don't know anything you're talking about right now?
There was a rope in like the first 10 or 20 minutes where she was just doing something with a rope. And it was such like a thick, sturdy rope. I was thinking, what is she doing with that rope? And right before they had been arguing. So I was wondering, like, oh, is that supposed to be implying that?
Oh
I had no
no.
idea. Yeah.
I don't want to rewatch the first half anymore.
Oh no.
That sounds like a killer. That sounds like a tilter.
Oh no.
Oh man. Um shit. Was there something else? I feel like I could just rip apart this movie for ages. Oh yeah. 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 Okay. Another evidence for Paul being a nice guy. He put the squash in the box for the dude to give to the California place. And I thought that was such a nice gesture. And then the dad just stares and just gets really annoyed for no reason. Paul's
what scene is this?
picking. It was the scene where the dad was going to negotiate with, in California. They were going to take the kid to see his heart and stuff, but Paul decided to prepare a really large box of produce as like a welcoming gift. And so Paul just keeps on putting stuff like, oh, these eggplants are good. Ooh. And then he puts the squash in, and then you just see this really scrunched up face from our main actor, our main character, our lead man. And he was just pissed. I think he's just being stingy. There's this idea that he's like a really stingy dude. That's why I think that also secures the idea. Do you remember this scene? I'm getting the hint that you don't remember this.
I don't quite remember it. No.
I love it. You tell me a scene I don't remember.
I remember the scene, but I don't remember the specific moment you're pointing to.
It was as they were packing up the morning and preparing that box, and there were these like almanacs, these little books about the farmers, Korean farmers. And yeah, no, he just seemed very pissed. He's like, okay, good. Yeah, we'll take the squash, okay. And then Paul was just like, they're not going to refuse it. They're not going to refuse it. And he just seemed so kind. He just puts more and more veggies because he wants our main guy to succeed.
Okay, I can buy that.
I feel like I should call him by his name, Jacob. Yeah. I just remembered his name. Yeah, he just wants Jacob to succeed. And I just really liked it. But then he gets... So yeah, my interpretation of the father, because again, I resonated with him in the first half of the movie. I liked some of his wishful thinking and his idealism. I liked how the farm represents like his version of the American dream. Actually, you know how we talked about we have certain things in movies that like just, we call them low-key fetishes, but it's like stuff that just are instant passes, like, oh, we're gonna like it automatically.
Is the American dream your fetish?
Yes, absolutely.
That's kind of
I fucking
awesome.
love the American dream.
That's a pretty good fetish to have.
Yeah, and I love it when it's warped. I love it when they play with it. So like, probably my least favorite example of the American dream is actually like the Leonardo DiCaprio Great Gatsby movie, or like just
I
the
haven't
way it's
seen it,
portrayed in the
actually.
Great Gatsby in general. I think it's not great, but as far as modern films like Spring Breakers, like they mentioned the American dream, but it's so fucked up. I love it. So yeah, no, that's why I liked how the farm represented that, and I liked how he's going for it. But then I started seeing all his character flaws, and they got a little weird. So like, the reason he doesn't like the exorcism was because he believed in hard work from he believes in relying on himself with the hard work. He doesn't believe in, I guess, divine intervention or something. And I thought, again, that was super underdeveloped. And then after that, there's like, he's also kind of stingy with the scene where he puts the plants in too close, which I think was later called back, where like, yeah, Paul gives him all the veggies to give the California dude, and then he just gets really mad. So like, why are you showing all these character flaws in the second half when it's not going to pay off? When it's just going to end with him in the fire.
I have a suspicion that this movie was edited down from a longer runtime.
Ooh, fascinating.
Because it feels like so much is missing from this movie.
Man, that's such a shame because, this movie kind of, it went through all the festival circuits like the Sundance and shit. I feel like Sundance, have I seen a Sundance film that's over 2 hours? Probably, but I don't know if I've seen a Sundance film that's 2.5 hours. You might have a point there.
It's only 2 hours though. Like,
It's like under
this
2
feels like
hours.
the film that wouldn't cut back, though. That's what's confusing about it.
Exactly. I
Like
agree.
maybe for some reason that we don't know about, they needed to cut down to 2 hours.
Maybe.
But you don't do that with an A24 film. That's why I'm confused.
No, and A24 clearly no. I think the film was made first in Korea. A24 bought this film after it showed at Sundance. Yeah.
So
that's
maybe
how it
this
works.
film was cut to be a theatrical film then.
No, I'm pretty sure this was the Sundance cut. They're not going to cut the film after they premiered in festival circuits. I'm more leaning towards the belief that this film was made this way. Or it was cut for Sundance. It could not have been cut by the studio. This was not a studio
Are
intervention
Sundance
thing.
films,
They're short.
they try to be 2 hours?
They're short, but I never would have suspected them to be boxed in by their short runtime. 2 hours and 15 minutes is probably the longest Sundance film I've seen.
Huh.
So there is good reason to suspect that. But I'm leaning towards the belief that it's just a creative choice. Maybe they feel like in order for it to get more viewership, the second half needs to be faster. That's possible.
The whole
Citizen
movie felt
Kane
way
has
too
a
fast to
fucking
me.
parrot that squawks in the audience's face randomly in the last third of the movie because Orson Welles thinks the movie is too slow. This is a real thing.
Wow.
So it's possible. That's the best moment in Citizen Kane, by the way. It's not.
I actually haven't finished
movie.
Citizen Kane. I think I walked out when you were showing it.
Yeah. It's impeccably shot. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, we're almost at the runtime of this film.
Really?
You'll probably, yeah, we're at an hour and a half
Wow.
for this conversation. You'll probably trim out the bit when my computer died, but
Yeah, that was only a few minutes though.
yeah. I'm satisfied. I tore this film apart.
I still don't, but I don't think I'm gonna be.
Is there anything else you want to wrap up?
I think I'm gonna give my final rating for this still at 3 stars.
Wow. Very nice.
Mostly because I want to like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
This is going to be one, I feel like, if we continue pursuing this type of Asian cinema, which we probably will.
I definitely want to, yeah.
Yeah. This could be one we come back to often, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll understand why. I mean, I think I understand pretty well why I don't like it, but I'm also not as well versed as I would like in this subgenre of film.
Uh-huh.
There's one director that I've been wanting to watch. He's a Korean director. Let me take a look. On the Beach at Night Alone. This is a director that I wanted to. Hang Sang-soo. Hang Sang-soo is another director who makes these really low-key films, and they've gotten a lot of good buzz. And then this and Koni Ada, who did the Shoplifters movie. Those are two directors that we could definitely go for. Kone Ada has actually been compared to as the modern Ozu, which is funny how we started off this conversation by mentioning Ozu.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen Shoplifters.
This
and I
film
don't
makes me
think-
want to watch more Ozu because I actually haven't seen that much.
Yeah, I've only seen one film, and it's Good Morning. You've seen Tokyo Story.
Yeah, I've seen Tokyo Story.
That's the biggie.
Yeah.
That's the one Kevin avoids because of the hype. That's something that I do.
I think I gave it 4 stars. I don't remember, but I remember liking it.
Nice. Well,
Or maybe I gave it 5. I don't know. Yeah, okay. I think we're done.
I think we're done.
I think we're
It's
done.
good.
Okay, I'll say one last thing. Why does this movie have so many nominations?
Because this movie. Have you seen the Letterboxd rating? Don't look at it. Take a wild guess.
I think I did look at it. Is it like 4.2 or something?
It's super fucking high. Yeah, it's a 4.2. You're right. It's in the top 250 Letterboxd films, and I
Wow.
don't think it's going to go down. It's not going to be one of those hype things. Everyone loves it.
Huh.
Yes, more power to them. I couldn't stop crying through the entire. Yeah, everyone talks about the soundtrack. I'm reading reviews randomly, but people say the movie is tender, and the soundtrack made it feel dreamy.
Yeah, like the fact that so many people are praising this movie makes me question, why did we not feel the magic?
Yeah, that happens.
Like
though.
we just talked about it for an hour and a half of like why we didn't.
We just don't see it that way.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. There are other films that I feel the same way. Breakfast Club is a big one.
Breakfast Club.
Seriously. I think the film is deeply problematic, but the reason why most of the people like it is because there's some sort of John Hughes magic that they see that I completely don't. And I think, they're totally different movies, but I think the reason this film is being so widely regarded is because there's just something in the air. It's like some people didn't like Call Me by Your Name because of some of the technicalities of the movie, about the age difference between the characters. But for me, and probably for you, there was just that magic.
I really felt the magic in that movie too.
Yeah. So, and that's another one that I get why. I would imagine, I don't know. I feel like if I talked to somebody who really likes this movie, they would probably be like, "You don't see it? You don't see why it's that good?" I'd be like, "No, I don't." And then I would mention all the points, and then they'd be like, "Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have a valid point."
I mean,
it's so good though.
We did just have like the last movie we saw was a 5 for you and like a 2.5 for me. We did just have that situation where.
But you were. I totally understood why you didn't like it as much. Also because you had a history with the director. So again, there's a lot more to latch on to.
Yeah, we both had a history with the director.
Yeah.
Yeah, where like you knew right off the hand that this was. You bought the magic.
Optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was optimistic.
Yeah. The magic worked for you.
Yeah.
The magic sauce. That's
sure.
That's the topic of everything.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the poster for Minari and it looks great, but it doesn't seem like the rest of the movie. It doesn't seem like the actual film warrants the poster. Also, why is the grandma not in the poster?
The grandma's not in the poster? She's such an important character.
Right. It's just the boy in the middle extending his arms and then all the other members of the family on the side holding him. So like the boy is the bridge between the rest of the family. But
maybe this movie does have something out for the grandma. I mean, I'm not reading that from the poster alone. I'm just
right.
Yeah.
Watch poetry. I mean, that's what I'm telling our audience. Watch poetry. Talk about an old lady who just love it. Could they be played by the same lady? Wait.
Oh, that'd be funny.
No. Nope. Yeah, they look pretty different. Okay. I don't know why. I feel like I just kind of want to sit here a little longer and just feel this movie a bit more.
It's our podcast. We can do whatever the fuck we want.
I know, but I genuinely feel like there's nothing else I want to say.
We could talk about the very ending again. How like nothing got resolved. Why do you think they did that?
It's the same reason why everything's so vague in the first half. So the first half didn't feel like it needed plot. I have a good pun.
Okay.
In the first half, the plot is the land. In the second half, the plot is the film. Or the script. There we go. That's I'm kind of proud of that one. I don't know.
The snake ran off with the land. I was gonna say the snake ran off with the plot, but that's That's not
Not the snake. Don't bring the snake
snake.
back. Oh my word. Yeah, there was such a thread about the snake. The first time they go there, oh my gosh, don't let the snake bite you.
Yeah, it was done in a way where it's like that's gonna come back, so you're expecting
Exactly.
it the entire time. Every time they go to that place,
Yeah.
the snake's gonna be there,
I
and the
don't
snake
know.
comes,
And the snake comes and it's nothing.
and there's nothing.
Yeah. Also, oh my gosh. Yeah, here's something. When the doctor told the boy that his heart was closing and it's getting better, it's like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It implies that there's something they're doing. What is that something they're doing?
I think that was implying to like how the grandmother was treating him, like
Maybe.
treating him
Or
like a
just
strong
the
boy.
Arkansas life. I don't know. It's like, I interpret it more like, they went to California and there's sort of like a vibe to California.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just the doctor saying, whatever you're doing down there in Arkansas, just keep doing it. It almost feels like there's a little bit of prejudice. It's not prejudice, but just a little bit of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit of that,
Maybe.
joking tone sort of thing. Yeah. I'm trying to think of another film that does this type of inconclusive shit. Actually, yeah, Poetry and Burning are both really good examples. Our film list just keeps on getting bigger and bigger. It's like all this time we had off from doing the podcast, there are so many films that now that we're doing it again, I want you to see because I feel like we'd have such interesting conversations.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's this film called Burning, and this was a really epic moment because both Burning and Shoplifters, I had a movie club back in the day, and I actually made them events for my movie club I drove everyone to the Dryden Theater to watch them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And people came, like we had like a solid 5 or 6 people turn out for each one, which is pretty great.
You fit them all
bringing
in your little
everyone.
car? You have
for
a rather large car actually.
Yeah, well, for one, I actually had to do 2 trips. Then the other one, I think there was another ride, which was nice.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, we saw Burning, which was this crazy. Yeah, it's either a slow burn or a really fast 2.5 hour long movie. I can't decide. It's both, but it's this really crazy thriller. It actually stars the same guy. So this actor here, okay. Here's something that makes me think that this might be catering towards an American audience. It's the casting of our main lead. So this actor broke out into the American, I guess, zeitgeist because of The Walking Dead. He played I think an Asian American character who was fluent in English in The Walking Dead.
Okay.
And it was to the point where people didn't even know he could actually speak Korean. So when he showed up as the villain in Burning, people were like, holy shit. He does real Korean cinema and not just Walking Dead.
That's cool.
And then he's in this movie, and that was the main selling point for the American audience. Like, oh, Steven Yeun is in this movie. But I feel like he doesn't do much. Like, the grandmother does way more in this film. Anyway.
Yeah, this movie felt like it wanted to be an ensemble film, and it wasn't.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. And it didn't even have that big of an ensemble to work with.
No.
That blows my mind because, like, if I think like a really good example of an ensemble film that has a drama is like Spotlight. You know?
Oh,
Spotlight?
that's the Catholic molesting film, right?
Yeah. Yes, the good journalism movie.
Yeah, I remember liking that a lot.
Yeah, it just told it the way it was super bland storytelling, but it was done so engagingly because it felt like an ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
There was just enough cinematic flair, and there was just enough good filmmaking choices to make it work.
Or you can compare it with something like Little Miss Sunshine,
Oh,
where every
oh
single
my
character
God.
in the family is so strong.
And no, that's an interesting example because, you know, the thing about Spotlight is it's about the story, right? And like one character has like this Oscar Beatty speech halfway, but most of the characters, they just play it straight. With Little Miss Sunshine, it's more comparable to Minari because each character does get a big moment. Like when the brother starts speaking and, you know, jumps out of the car. I won't go into details. Or like, yeah, the grandfather has a lot of great moments.
Yeah, like every
Steve
character
Carell.
has their own arc, with maybe
Yeah,
the exception of
exactly.
the little daughter, but even her
Yeah.
is like, she's pretty developed.
I agree.
Like much more developed than
The daughter in
the
this
daughter in this
movie.
film, which got like almost zero development.
Yeah, I agree. Just do something simple. Just do a simple arc. Just give her something, some development. Like maybe you're going for like a pastoral type of Totoro thing, but even in Totoro, or like when Marnie was there, you know, I keep on bringing back this scene where like the kids have this argument in Totoro after a certain family member goes through some hardship, because that's the only dramatic moment. Yet with that Miyazaki magic, it feels so important because we're put into the minds of these kids.
Yeah.
And that's a movie where, you know, most of the film, these kids are just playing around. But that emotional climax just felt so right. The same thing with Marnie was there. You know, there's the ending realization of certain identities, and that becomes the arc. I don't know. You can.
The very first shot of this movie actually made me think of Totoro.
What was it again?
It's them driving up to their new home.
Oh yeah, I think I thought of something like that.
Yeah,
too.
Totoro opens the same exact way, as well as
Interesting.
Spirited Away. I realized in the moment.
Yes, yes, as well as Spirited Away.
I guess that might be a trope.
You know, now that I think about
Yeah.
it, this movie might be more inspired by Ghibli than I had thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe also.
Well, it could just be a trope
Your
from
Name.
that part of the world. I don't know.
It could be. Could be.
Although,
Why name the movie
knows?
Minari though? Why is that the name of the movie? Why?
no idea.
Your
I don't-
Name
I-
isn't called Musubi because it's more elegant than that.
Well, Minari sounds cool, I guess, but
Oh. Yeah, it's better than the Arkansas Koreans.
my neighbors, the Koreans.
No.
My neighbors, the Yamadas. My neighbors, the
Oh,
Koreans.
nice.
Or
Oh, what a baffling movie. Okay. I do want to watch one more. Okay. I mean, honestly, even after, I'm probably not going to watch the Oscar ceremony because it's probably going to be lame. And to probably have game night that night.
when is that happening? Like tomorrow or
Sunday.
Sunday? Well, that's tomorrow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, if we.
Or
yeah,
technically,
today is Saturday. Yes.
Technically tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I might not watch it, but even afterwards, I just like keeping track of some of the few films that came out last year. You know,
I'd be down
Like, we
for
sh-
watching like maybe one or two more of the Oscar films this year.
Okay, because because I have a good source for which ones are good and which ones are bad, or which ones are worth. And I gotta say, most of them are actually worth watching.
Cool.
There's
Okay.
a film called Judas and the Black Messiah. I think it's a historical one, and it's got like this. I think it's about civil rights and shit, but apparently it's really, really great.
We were gonna watch the animated. Is it
Wolf Walkers.
Scottish or Irish? What is it?
Irish, yeah.
Irish. Okay.
You saw Song of the Sea?
Yeah, we saw it together.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain we saw
Nice.
it together.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that Wolf Walkers should be getting the win, but because of Soul, like, there's no way.
Soul probably will get it hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah. People
Soul's
like
gonna
Soul
get
too
it.
much.
I like the message. I like the message enough to give it 4.5, or maybe 4, like a high 4.
Of Soul?
But yes, but I think it's deeply flawed.
Yeah. I think we talked about it a little bit. Yeah, Soul is...
Yeah, does not pull it.
I gave it a whopping 2 stars.
A whopping 2 stars.
Which... My star rating reflects my experience with the film, and that film was 2 stars because of missed potential.
Well, it's also which other filmmaker that film evokes, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of other filmmaker, we should watch Other Filmmaker for this podcast.
We should.
Because, yeah.
Yeah, I think we should do it. Oh man, at this point we've surpassed the runtime of the film.
That's great.
We just did it. We just reached it. We just reached the time including the end credits. Like the official runtime of the movie. Yeah, I'm really curious about Judas and the Black Messiah because I've just been hearing great things.
Cool.
Well, yeah, we'll see how we feel. We'll just throw one in occasionally and then get to the Snyder Cut as well at some point.
Yes, we need to watch it before I completely
forget all the Bronx jokes.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, go plant your Minaris out in the fields and harvest them and eat them.
Go.
Bye. Enjoy your time.
Go hug your grandmother if they're still alive.
Yes, absolutely. Do that. Okay, bye.
Bye.